I'm here representing the Jane Project. I'm very excited to be here at TENWEST because it feels like a fundamentally different community than what you usually get at a conference, not just here in Arizona, but really around the country. As a marketer, CEO, and co-founder of Magic Branding, I love to see the design and to hear all about your creative businesses. But as co-founder of Jane, what I'm deeply concerned about is making sure that our creator economy, our small businesses, our startups have access to those resources. And my co-founder, Aly, and I, we work with women around the state to educate on the world of venture capital. So a lot of what we'll talk about here today will center on women's access to venture capital. So let's get into the problem. We call it the 2% problem. You'll find out why here. When you look at the amount of venture capital allocated to entrepreneurs across the country, 98% of those dollars go to male-founded startups. That means that only 1.9% of that capital is flowing to female-founded startups. And when you layer on the intersectional identities and the underserved communities of being a female founder of color, that number tanks to 0.1%. This problem, these are just numbers, but we're here to tell you this is a problem. And we're also here to tell you this represents a massive opportunity in this world. So first, the problem isn't that women aren't good enough at entrepreneurship. I'm also going to tell you the problem isn't that there aren't enough female entrepreneurs. When you look at women-run businesses, we tend to have 10% more profitable exits. That means when we sell or we get acquired, whatever that big, exciting step is, we are 10% more profitable for not just ourselves, but for the people that helped us build those companies. That has a community impact. When you look at every dollar invested in our companies, we return 35% more ROI for our investors. So we're a really good bet as an investor. Our companies perform 63% better. And we bring in 152% more revenue. These numbers indicate that there's no reason women should only get 1.9% of that venture capital. So why does that happen? There's a lot of reasons. We're going to present a few of them here today. One of which that is pretty astounding and very data-driven is this study done by Harvard Business School. They took 521 seasoned investors. They showed them two different pitches, one from a man and one from a woman. And then they asked those investors to guess or to make their assumption on which one of those real-life pitches was funded. At the end of the study, they found 68% of the investors favored the male pitches, even when they were identical across other people who reviewed to the female pitches. So we have a bias in the pitch process, in the business review process to tackle. We also have less access to networks. I'm guessing that a bunch of people in this room have walked into a room, maybe not unlike this, although this is a beautiful collection of humans, but I've walked into a room, a networking event, and just seen the sea of people. Nobody looks like you. They're all in these tight little circles. And you're like, oh my gosh, I have to figure out how to break in. I have to go figure out how to start a conversation with somebody I don't know. And none of those people look like me. They're not coming from the same place I come from, or the point of view, the things I care about. How do I even get that started? The energy expense of that, the time expense, and the fact that you might not even have access to get into the room all represent this problem of access to networks. Guessing you guys have heard the phrase, your network is your net worth. When you're an entrepreneur, that's so real. When you're an entrepreneur and you have a legal crisis, who do you turn to? When you are trying to get funding, who do you turn to? When you need to build your team, who do you turn to? Your network. And so if our networks are fundamentally different than the networks of our counterparts, then we're being fundamentally held back with the support that we need. Because just like it takes a village to raise a child, I'm going to assert that it takes a village to raise a business. And there just aren't enough women in capital. So sitting at the table, making decisions, giving money towards that flow of resources to entrepreneurs are honestly a lot of men. So when you look at fund managers, these are people who control where the money comes from and who gets it. Only 18% are women. And at 10%, only 10% are actual investors themselves. Those are people who give directly to a company or give to a fund. And while this alone isn't necessarily painting the exact issue is that women's voices, when you're only at 18 and 10%, aren't able to get through. What that means are voices that are different then the status quo, then the norm aren't getting through. New perspectives aren't getting through. New approaches aren't getting through, which means that we tend to take kind of a similar set of patterns year after year, decade after decade, when it comes to investing in businesses. And we're sitting in a room. I'm going to guess that a lot of people here today are here because we're trying to change something. We have a passion, a motivation, and a drive. We want to see something better for our communities. And if we keep making decisions the exact same way, how are we going to input that innovation? So what happens if we get more women on the cap table? What happens if we get more women and more historically underserved entrepreneurs and investors participating in this marketplace? We unlock $2.5 to $5 trillion in the global GDP. That's a massive number. It's a number that is so big that understanding what it means is really hard. So here's some examples. With just $175 billion a year, we could end extreme poverty for 10 years, according to the World Bank. We could provide healthcare for low-income families for 12 years. And we could fully fund global education for 60 years. Amazing. I mean, these are the problems that feels too big to solve, right? And so much of what holds these problems back is capital. When women create wealth, we create impact. 90% of household charitable decisions are driven by women. When women have excess resources, they contribute it back to the community, to their teams, to the people they serve, the people they work with. That every dollar given to a woman's business represents impact in many different dimensions. We don't see the same outcomes or impacts from male-driven startups. Not to say it doesn't happen, because there are some amazing men who are entrepreneurs out there. But because of this shift towards women driving those charitable decisions, that lens, that point of view that we bring to the table just isn't represented as often. And access to capital is at the center. So we want to go do all of those amazing initiatives that Mayor Romero is talking about. We need that policy support. So it's wonderful to have that here. We also need money to fuel it. We need money to support the economies, to invest in the innovations. We need to see people with more wealth creation so they can contribute back into the pool of capital to go back to the innovations. And when you have this healthy ecosystem of capital flowing, we have resources to drive the impact that we need. So when we look at getting more women and more people who are from those underserved communities in the world of entrepreneurship, we think about getting all of these folks, myself included, folks in this room included, to the cap table. How do we do that? Well, we need to demystify, we need to encourage participation. So we encourage this group to create and participate in programs that are designed to demystify and empower you to understand and navigate the world of venture capital, or honestly, capital as a whole, because we're not just here to talk about venture capital. Invest in women, support women-owned businesses. You know, we've talked a lot about being localists. As important as being localist is thinking about the types of businesses that you're supporting and who their owners are, who their founders are. Let's make sure that we're spreading the love and making sure that small women-owned businesses, businesses that are run by people of historically underserved backgrounds, have those opportunities. When you're an investor, seek funds where serving these communities is at least 50% of their portfolio. Mentor and sponsor, join programs. I mean, we have some really cool organizations that you guys are going to hear about today that are examples of the types of organizations we want to encourage everybody here to participate in, sponsor events. This is it. This is my soft little plug here that at the Jane Project, we are a nonprofit. We take donations if you feel moved. But sponsoring organizations like ours, sponsoring the people doing the work is really important. And mentoring the people doing the work is important, right? The number of times we sit down and we're looking at the trees and not the forest is huge. And so when you can come in with your expertise and help guide initiatives like this, it is transformational. And we need to lower barriers to access. We talked about a lot of access barriers today. One that I haven't hit on yet is that often when you are in a position of kicking off your investment journey, it's often a minimum $50,000 check that you're expected to write. If we were to lower that minimum investment to say $5,000, $10,000, we are de-risking women and people who have not explored and spent a lot of time in this space, taking that first step and taking that first risk. So it's crucially important that we lower barriers to access. Be a connector. support women-owned businesses, explore careers in venture or in supporting small business and entrepreneurship as a whole, and give diversity a voice. These are our pillars. These are the things that we want everybody to walk away and to do. In addition to becoming a Jane, heading to our website and doing all that really good stuff where you can subscribe, get our newsletters, join our events. We hope to be bringing more and more programming down here in Tucson, to be working with lots of different groups in order to get this message out there and in order to make sure that while you're kicking off your capital journey here today, that you have many different places to go to continue it.